Shoot away. I might, because just like a quick point, I'm on my laptop and I actually, and all of my notes, like, and my story itself are behind you guys. So I might have to sort of like click around to give you a clean answer for when I assume you're going to edit this podcast?
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's probably better if I pause for a second, find my notes, and give you a clear answer rather than stumble my way through it, like if I'm citing an actual study or something. So just bear with me because I couldn't do this with multiple screens up. So
yeah, whatever you need. We can edit it any way you want.
cool. Okay.
Well, for me, it really starts with your own journey. You work for Quartz, which is an online magazine, right? And well, I don't know. Could you just talk about your professional career to start us off a little bit?
Really old, so it's very long.
Yeah.
I've been writing for over 20 years. I started as a reporter in Mexico City for an English language publication that nobody's ever heard of. Went to grad school because I didn't understand the economics that I was writing about in Mexico during the devaluation. And then got a job at a finance magazine in New York called Institutional Investor and really sort of built up an expertise in finance and the New York Times there. And I spent 10 years at the New York Times, and first I covered finance for about 7 of them, and then I had a couple kids and I was getting really interested in education, and I found out I was just reading about it all the time. So they put me into the education world. I covered that for 3 years, and then in London I was in finance and I really missed the education stuff, and Quartz approached me with the ability to create my own obsession, and that obsession I created was the science of learning and another one around the art of parenting, and sort of this intersection of a lot more we know about education and science and what we're trying to accomplish, but how do we do it? And it's all messy, and how do I do it without being hysterical, basically, which a lot of places are.
That's awesome to have that autonomy, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. It's been a lot of fun.
That's good. So you'd say your interest in education came through through your own parenting and as your children sort of worked into the school system, or was it even prior to that, or what sparked that interest?
Yeah. I remember the first policy book I read on education. Again, dating myself, I'm probably way older than you, but I read a book called Savage Inequalities by Jonathan Kozol when I was probably a junior in high school. And it just blew me away, the kind of fact, at the time I was having an amazing education every day in school, amazing teachers, great peers, and to sort of get this portrait of what many kids were getting, it just struck me. And so, yeah, it's been a lifelong interest. I've always read about it endlessly. You know, I kind of read everything everybody else does, but it wasn't what I did. And then I decided this is bonkers. I'm just going to do this because this is what I love.
Yeah, great. So most recently, I mean, the reason that I reached out to you is because of this, because of empathy, and you noticed something happening in Denmark. I guess there's another famous line there, but something happening in Denmark. But could you describe what you discovered there? What's going on with empathy and Denmark?
Yeah, so I saw a piece that was written by a woman who wrote a book about parenting in Denmark, and it was a piece about how Danish schools taught empathy, and I thought that's amazing because by teaching it and embedding it in the curriculum, you were making it very clear that that's something you value, right? You're putting it there, you're setting aside the time, you're giving teachers the resources. They've even given it a format. You cook a cake, a particular kind of cake every week, so that they're really kind of invested in this idea of taking time to learn these skills. How do you learn to be, hopefully some of us are born empathetic, but even if you aren't, how do you build those skills? And I just love the idea that in the same way that you would spend hours on a field practicing your soccer, or you would spend hours, honing your binomials, you would also practice empathy. You would practice listening to others and sort of, it's almost, I think a little bit, again, I'm older, but like it's like marriage counseling for teenagers, right? How do you actually properly listen to each other? How do you put your defenses down and hear each other? And how do you design a classroom and a space to do that? And they've done that, and I just loved it. And I got super excited about it. So I called the author and I interviewed her, and she told me about it.
Yeah, that's great. And so what were some of the ways you discovered them practicing that?
So they have, starting from basically kindergarten, there is an hour set aside every single week. Class and tide. I'm sure I'm botching the language here. My Danish is not particularly good, but it's an hour that's set aside, mandated by law, and kids sit in a circle and they bake this cake. And the idea is it's very open format. There's no structure to it, but it's to talk about a problem anyone in the class is feeling. So one of the things that it is bound to teach you is the courage to say you're having a problem, right? I mean, that in and of itself is very challenging. You're doing it in a space where people have to listen to you. You know, the teacher's going to be aware of the importance of people's body language and how they talk. And so they had this hour. And there was a line in the story which I just loved, which read it to me, said, of course I can't, but it's something along the lines of like, you have to be heard to be, like everybody gets to be heard, and to be heard is like a pretty human thing, right? If you really know you're being heard properly, allows you to do a lot of things, to take risks academically, to feel safe socially. I think that's going to enable so many other things. And so I was encouraged by that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's what we're trying to practice here. I mean, we're trying to practice it more than preach it with this movement. Is let's just get our stories out there and get them in a safe space. And because it just opens up community, and we know that when a community is stronger, then people can move better through that into success. So,
but even our movement is only extracurricular; it's not embedded in the curriculum like in Denmark. So some people would argue that that's for the parents to worry about. That's for something to happen at home. You know, elevating empathy and teaching empathy. What is your view? You know, obviously you think that it should be embedded in the curriculum, but why?
Because I think we have a lot of research now that shows us that, you know, the sum of a person's success in life, if we're defining success by employment and satisfaction and a sense of fulfillment, getting a 1600 on your SAT, right? That is a piece of it, but it is not everything. There are many skills that we need, and I think schools and parents should be very aware that along with these sort of academic skills we're building, there are all of these other critically important skills, which I think you could call character, you could call values without the sort of weird religious overtones, you can call it something, but kids need those to succeed. They need to know how to be resilient, they need to know how to push through a tough task, and they really need to know how to hear others. The world is very global, and it's a critical life skill to be able to listen, to hear someone different than you, to hear them and to sort of think about how you respond, to be sensitive to that response. So I just think it's a critical life skill. And so, you know, I don't know if US schools can embed it in their curriculum, but if enterprising teachers can find a way to teach it, that's amazing. So hats off to you guys.
Well, so that's one of the questions is like, action steps. I mean, as you process it as a journalist and as a parent and through all of your different identities, what has happened to push more? I don't know if my question's very good, but it's meant to be wide. What are some ways that we can do that? Yeah.
So I love, I'm not going to remember it, and I'll remember a few pieces of it, but one of the links in my story was Michelle Borba, who wrote a book about empathy, has this list of 9 characteristics of empathetic people, and she sort of derived this from interviews with 60 Nobel Peace Prize winners, and very great. It's a great way of framing that there are these 9 skills And one of the most basic ones, and this is the one I think about as a parent a lot, is modeling, right? Are you kind to others? Do you listen to others? Do you stop on the street to help somebody who needs help, even if you're in a rush? You know, these actions add up. And so I guess modeling is probably the most critical one as a parent we can use. I think as a teacher, as with being a parent, there is positive reinforcement. When you see it happen, celebrate, right? That was amazing, the way Jamil helped Jane with her homework. She was really struggling. He didn't judge her for not knowing how to do something that other kids in the class knew how to do, but he helped her. What a great thing. Thanks a lot for doing that. I think those little things, and if you could have an hour every week in the classroom, fantastic. I recognize that that might not be realistic. But, you know, I do think modeling, I think calling it out when you see it, I don't know, maybe making ambassadors or empathy ambassadors of sorts, sort of teaching, getting a couple people to maybe read Borba's work and then bring it to the class and do a presentation. Maybe doing a unit on helps solve a global problem. I don't know, did empathy end slavery? Did empathy end, you know, the Cold War? I doubt it did, but it's an interesting question to pose. And it's not maybe a traditional way of posing it. What role did empathy play in X? Could we find anything that said, you know, when Abraham Lincoln saw the lives of X? I don't know. So I'm just sort of riffing off the top of my head, but these are ways that I'm thinking of.
So we're a new IB school, and that International Baccalaureate School is just our, well, year 2. We just started year 2, but that sounds like an IB type of question is, what, you know, how much could empathy play in these bigger historical moments? So I have a question about naysayers, actually. You know, when you start working on this and we start putting episodes out or we start sharing podcasts, I've run into a few people who say, well, your efforts are, I mean, minimal. There's still going to be cruelty. There's still going to be, you know, when you're responding to that kind of, well, one, I'm kind of curious if you even run into that, but if you do, how do you respond or react to that?
I would say, well, I'm trying to be politic here.
You don't have to be.
I would say something is better than anything in any realm. I mean, honestly, if you want to look at the political landscape today in America and look at Donald Trump and look at Hillary Clinton, I think you could argue that empathy is something seriously short on both sides. I don't think this is just a Donald Trump problem. We are having a problem with civil discourse, and that is a big conversation. And so what is it going to take for us to actually be able to hear each other? I don't know. Is it more math? Probably not. Is it more science? Unlikely. Is it a Jane Austen? It's definitely not. It is empathy, right? It is the ability to recognize attracted to Trump for a reason, right? And we should be understanding that reason and not just condemning him for being a bigot and a misogynist. But why? Why are people like, let's exercise some genuine and think about to be unemployed or have your wages be stagnant for 20 years, maybe why Donald Trump's message would appeal to you in that instance. You know, I just feel like it's so lacking. So to anyone who says like this might not make a difference, oh shit. I mean, a lot of things might not make a difference, but it's damn well worth trying.
That's right.
Worth trying.
That's right. Amen. Amen. Have you got a?
I had a question.
I'm thinking about you as like a passionate, like what's next? You know, so you know, you as a and also I'm kind of curious about the profession too. So as a journalist, right, you put this out, and then then you have to move to the next piece, and I get that. But do you feel connected to different pieces differently? Have you ever had pieces then that take you down a path for a longer period of time? And
so I do this great exercise in grad school where you have to write what you want on your gravestone, and I wanted wife, mother, author, teacher. And I have never been, I coached sports, but I've never been a teacher. And so I think back in the recesses of my mind, every piece I write about parenting and teaching is sort of back in there saying, is this something I'm going to do someday in my life? Could I do this in an effective way at my age? You know, I in life, and a sort of 21-year-old, I have kids. And, so I think about that. I do feel more connected to some pieces than others, but I feel like teaching or journalism is a lot like learning. I mean, every piece builds on the next, right? So having that little bit about empathy is hopefully going to help me recognize another good story about that, or maybe where empathy interventions are failing. Maybe they're trying to teach empathy tools and it's not working. Well, let's talk about that too. Let's talk about what's not working, what's working. Let's get it out there. And so I guess I'm always on the lookout for great stories. I feel like every story is just a way of exercising those muscles of writing, refining, thinking. Trust me, I have made millions of mistakes in my life, learned from each of those. And so every story kind of adds to your body of knowledge, hopefully introduces you to some new ideas and some new people and some new ways of thinking. And then you just keep building on that.
Yeah.
Have you considered teaching?
I have. I just don't know how I would do it. After 9/11, I actually signed up for there's a program in New York City that trains people to be teachers. I do love to write, and so it's just a bit of I think I would love to teach, but I like a great job, which I love, and I kind of look forward to doing every day. So it seems a little bit crazy to give that up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
A privilege in life. So I don't know is the answer. There might very open to the idea. It's sort of in what context, at what time, to what end, which students. A lot of questions to answer to get there, but I definitely consider it all the time.
We want to be aware of time, but I'm curious about, I saw your next article actually, and I love it as preparation for the holidays. Do you want to talk about that a bit? It seemed
that's actually really old. I wrote that over before Thanksgiving last year. I think the point it raised was really good, and I guess I was just thinking, if you guys are talking about empathy, this idea of sort of curiosity as the vehicle through which empathy can come, I think is a powerful one, right? A lot of us just want to hear what we want to believe. Right? I want to have a conversation with you about politics, and then we can just all confirm. And I think being really empathetic means you kind of have to be genuinely curious, curious and open, not just curious to confirm. So I guess I was presenting it because he was saying that, even in hostage negotiation tactics, one great tactic is curiosity. The way you get to the mind of a completely crazy person who's about to blow the heads off of 50 people is to try to figure out why are you, what got you here? What's going on? Let's talk about this. That is, I think if we can harness that, we get closer to empathy. So it was more of I didn't just write that, but it made me, when I was thinking about empathy before this conversation, I thought, that's something that might be able to help us as we think about empathy is curiosity, real curiosity.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking with us. I have so much to say on the topic, but I'm trying to be respectful of time. And
just before you guys go, will you tell me a little bit about your project so I can learn too?
Yeah, so Ashley, I'll let Ashley start, and I know she's pressed for time. I know she's late for a class, so we gotta get her back to class.
It's okay. This is worth it. So this is a movement that Mr. Tooney started 3 years ago now. He started with a book that he wrote with a student, and it was entitled "Elevate Empathy," and it told the stories of students in your classes. And then from there, we moved to the podcast. Which just simply tells stories of people that maybe we don't know, or maybe we want other people to hear their stories because we think they're important to hear. Just with the idea that when you get to know someone better, you're less likely to bully them or judge them for, something you may not know what's going on in their life. And then This year, we have expanded it even further to include writing and art. So we have people submit writing, submissions and art submissions based around a certain theme we have that month or something else relating to elevating empathy.
Very cool. And can you give a sense as to where you think it's quote unquote working? Are you seeing examples of how it's sort of being processed by kids?
So for me, so this is where I struggle a little bit, to be honest with you. I wish there were numbers. I wish there was a way to absolutely know. One thing I know is that in a year, we have like 55. We just published our 55th episode of our podcast. And, it has we just got over 4,000 listens. So it's very local. It's very in our community right now, but we're trying to start expanding that. I'd love to get it more into the county, more into neighboring counties, maybe then statewide. I mean, those are some of the goals, but it's, I don't have numbers as to, now people are more empathetic. I'm happy to report, and I don't take credit for this, but our school is working now on a series that we're calling The Whole Child. So actually we have an event today. So we just show videos so we shrink every class by about 7 minutes, and then we come back to the last hour for a half an hour. Oh, I think I might have lost her actually. Are you still there? She's not.
Oh no.
Shoot. Well, why don't you get going,
and
then if I can connect with her again, I will. And
that'll be
we'll
awesome.
go later. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. And
thank you.